the first day of this exciting conference. I hope you enjoyed the reception last night and the first session this morning. We're here to talk about the topic of implementing no deforestation by RSPO. And my name is Ann Rosenbarger. I work for the World Resources Institute, and I'll be moderating the session today. I am one of the co-chairs of the Board of Governors, but I've also been involved in both the No Deforestation Task Force and the No Deforestation Joint Steering Group, so can maybe chime in with my own opinions here and there too. I'm going to quickly introduce all of our panelists up here today. We've got those who have been really actively involved in these discussions since the start. So we've got first to my right here, Grant Rossman from Greenpeace is a senior advisor on global forest solutions, and he's also a member of the HCSA, the High Carbon Stock Approach Executive Committee, and as one of the co-founders of HCSA. We've got next to him Lee Kuan Yi, who is the Senior Sustainability Manager for KLK. And Kuan Yi is also an alternate member of the Board of Governors and the co-chair of the No Deforestation Task Force Human Rights Working Group, and a member of the Human Rights Working Group. And she was active in the PNC Review Task Force and the interim groups on smallholders, so has been talking about these topics for a couple of years now. We've got next to me Mr. Olivier Tichet, who's the Director of Sustainable Supply Chains at Musimas. And Olivier is also an alternate member of the Board of Governors, you're not representing the growers from the Pacific anymore. P&T, processor and trader these days. He's the co-chair for the Standard Standing Committee, was involved in the PNC Review Task Force talking about no deforestation, and was active in the No Deforestation Task Force discussions as well. We've got Jenny Walter Thos from WWF Germany, who's the policy officer for sustainable biomass and standards. And Jenny is our other co-chair of the No Deforestation Task Force. She was also involved in the PNC review discussions when we've been talking about no deforestation, and is also a member of the No Deforestation Joint Steering Group, amongst lots of other different working groups. Didn't read those full bios because everybody up here is in about 30 different working groups and task forces, so just tried to focus on the stuff that's related to no deforestation. All right, so the way that we're going to do this session today is to have a couple of brief presentations, but then really open it up to be more of an audience participation session. So it would be really great to start to get questions from all of you. That's really what this session is all about, to make sure that you all have the information that you need and that we're answering the questions that you'd like to hear about. So you can submit your questions through the app. So I've got the iPad up here where I can see those, or you can feel free to raise your hands and we'll also come around and take your questions that way. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Grant to start off. Thanks, Grant.
Morning, everyone. It's good to be able to give an update on our perspective, I guess, on how RSPO is implementing no deforestation. And I'll start with giving a little bit of background on high carbon stock approach, which is the tool, I guess, that's been adopted by RSPO to do no deforestation. It came in response to global concerns around deforestation and climate change in 2009, 2010, and then we needed a methodology, an approach to be able to put this in place on the ground. So the high carbon stock approach evolved from that and formed into an initiative, I guess, a steering group in 2014. The key question we really had to face was which areas are forest and which areas are degraded land where development can continue. So, for example, this landscape in Liberia, having to answer that question. So it's a global methodology to address no deforestation commitments. It's a land use planning tool. It integrates with the high conservation values and assessments. And It incorporates peatland conservation and community rights and livelihoods as well. So it puts no deforestation into practice on the ground. It's known as a nature-based solution to climate change and the biodiversity crisis. It does this through stratifying the vegetation, so breaking it into classes and then determining which ones are forest and which ones are non-forest, and then what we call degraded lands and so forth. Following the adoption, I guess, by RSPO a year ago to bringing the HESA toolkit into the PNC, soon after the UN recognised the high carbon stock approach, UN Environment Programme, as a global methodology that can address no deforestation commitments. And more recently, at the UN Climate Summit, the high carbon stock approach was recognised as a nature-based solution there as well. Just a quick overview of how the assessments work. Most of you will be familiar, and I won't go into detail because my colleagues on the panel will go through more on how the RSPO system is addressing the implementation and the transition. A bit too close, is it? Sorry.
You need closer.
Oh, I need to be closer. Okay. So since November 2017, the high carbon stock approach integrated its assessments with the high conservation value assessment. So all assessments going forward are integrated assessments. And so this is the rough schematic of how the assessments are done, from the pre-assessment stage through the scoping study and then the full assessment. And so for efficiency and for practicalities, we work together to put the two approaches together. And I guess there is some arrangements where HCV assessments were done already by some companies, and so then they had to retrofit the high carbon stock approach assessment. So we have a little bit of that situation, but that's a transitional arrangement. But the high carbon stock approach is a bit broader than that. It has some preconditions, such as a moratorium on land clearing, on conversion prior to the assessments being done, and also following the completion of the integrated assessment, there's the development and the finalisation of the integrated conservation and land use plan, what we call the ICLUT. The last thing you need is another acronym to try and remember, but anyway, here it is, another one. And it describes the plan that the company or the operator has to develop together with the local community to finalise the conservation areas and the development areas and the community land use areas. And then from that, management and monitoring. And HESA goes further then to work together to try to achieve the long-term conservation of those areas as well. So just some update. The toolkit and the HES approach is dynamic and adaptive to the situations we're facing and is growing all the time. So there's some new developments. The first is the social requirements, where we have 14 social requirements that are in process of being added to the toolkit. Now, most of these are already in the toolkit, and most of them are already in RSPO standards. So there's not much new here, including FPIC and participatory mapping and food security. But there is some clarifications and some more detailing that has been done here. So these will be entering the toolkit and the approach over the next year or two. And there's some trials on the implementation of those now. The second part is adaptation for smallholders. That's been a big issue. The focus of the high carbon stock approach up till now has largely been around concessions and companies. Now we're moving to, we recognise a big gap that we need to have it adapted for smallholders to use so that they can also use it to demonstrate that they are meeting no deforestation requirements as well. So we have developed a draft HCV, HCS smallholder checklist and guidance, and it'll be trialled from this month in Indonesia and hopefully in other places. And from that, we hope that will then move through into the RSPO system as well as a simple approach where smallholders can also do no deforestation. And together with that, we'll be integrating it with incentives and benefits for the smallholders and for the community for conservation, because the message from the community and the smallholders is very clear. We're not going to do all this additional work to demonstrate no deforestation unless there's some benefit coming to us. We need to see benefit. So this we will work together with them on as well. Thirdly, on high forest cover landscapes, this is what we call legacy cases. So it was a situation when the high carbon stock approach was, the toolkit was brought in. There were operations that were already half developed or in process and had commitments with the local community or with their permits and things like that. And so we opened a process of where concession holders or companies could submit applications following to meet eligibility criteria, where we consider some sort of exceptions for their situation. So there's a group in HCSA that's been reviewing these applications. Several have been accepted, and they will be notified soon. So it's about working with companies who are committed to transparency, because we need to see the details of these concessions and see that they're legal and so forth, and balancing development with conservation and community needs there. So it's about finding a practical solution there. Fourthly, we have a protection working group, and as I mentioned with this ICLIP, the Integrated Conservation and Land Use Plan, there's some detail in the toolkit on it, but not enough, and so we're developing guidance and requirements for that, and that'll be prioritised over the next few months. Then there'll be guidance also on the high forest cover and HCV areas management and monitoring. It's no point in identifying these areas unless you have the follow-up that follows through on that, and HCSA is setting up a monitoring system for that. And we want to look at the financing for conservation, because these areas won't protect themselves. They need support to achieve the conservation of those areas. Finally, there's a track of work on large-scale indicative mapping, where we recognise that to have the broader adoption of the high carbon stock approach, we have to come up with these larger maps as quick as we can. So we're developing a procedure for that, and producing indicative HCV, HCS maps for landscapes and jurisdictions. For example, this one for West Papua and Indonesia, to help speed the process, and then it makes it simple for smallholders or for smaller companies to know exactly where they are in relation to potential high carbon stock forest areas. Finally, just some reflections, I guess, on where RSPO is with implementing no deforestation. We can see post the PNC approval last year, there's around 30 assessments that are either in integrated assessments or standalone assessments since then that are coming forward or moving forward. Secondly, you can have no deforestation on paper. So you have it in the PNC, that's great. It was a big step forward for RSPO, and that was a good move. However, to put it on place on the ground is another story altogether. So implementing it and implementing RSPO's system will need to address the current weaknesses that there are in the assurance system. And there was a report yesterday from EIA and Grassroots really identifying some of these ongoing assurance problems in the system and the weaknesses there are on the ground. So these need to be fixed if no deforestation is going to be achieved, and it can be credibly implemented. So RSPO cannot claim no deforestation. It cannot claim it is a no deforestation standard until these implementation issues are fixed on the ground. We need to be really clear about that. And to go a little bit further, if you're looking at it slightly broader, there's also a need to have no deforestation in RSPO members' supply chains. So such as in the conventional oil, it currently mixes into the mass balance arrangement in supply chains. You cannot have deforestation oil mixing with RSPO certified no deforestation oil. That's not credible in the marketplace, so RSPO will not be seen as a no deforestation standard if that is not fixed as well. And finally, I want to talk about a report that's being launched today by Greenpeace and some research on an aspect of no deforestation on burning. Now, no burning has been a part of RSPO from the beginning, from 2005, but we still see it as a huge problem in Indonesia and connected to RSPO. So our research has found that 75% of the groups that have fires in their concessions are RSPO members as groups. So this is kind of shocking for us. We thought the RSPO group members, they would be the better companies, but what we're finding is that a lot of them are not. And this is some 10,000 hotspots. It's not just a small amount of burning. This is a lot of fires. So this is an issue of implementation on the ground. You can have the standard, but you've got to implement it properly. And this flows through into all of the RSPO members, particularly the consumer goods companies that now have these companies that are connected to fires in their supply chain and then contaminating their products and their claims. So this is not very good news for us. So just a final comment, I think RSPO really turned a corner last year when they adopted the high carbon stock approach and no deforestation in the PNC. That was fantastic, a good move. The next step is to implement it really strongly, and it must do this. It must fix the problems with implementation if it's going to be able to make a claim that is a no deforestation standard. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. Just going to maybe prompt discussion before we move to the other groups to get folks thinking about what they might ask later on, or feel free to go ahead and send your questions, but then I'll prompt them at the end once everyone's presented. So now that the RSPO has adopted the HCSA toolkit, it seems that the kind of how the HCSA as an organization and the RSPO as an organization work together will be really important. Can you tell us a little bit more about the organizational structure of the HCSA and how you view kind of the roles between the HCSA, the HCVRN, the RSPO, and how all of those fit together or should fit together?
Yeah, so I didn't give details of how HCSA is organised. It's a multi-stakeholder organisation, a membership organisation with companies, NGOs, and technical support organisations. So we work together as a group, a consensus-based organisation, and we see the implementation of the toolkit into the PNC as we need a strong partnership with RSPO for that, and we need to find a very good way to work together, as we are doing with the HCV Resource Network as well. So I think we have some concerns, I guess, around some of the governance aspects. So, what happens, the toolkit will be evolving and changing, and some of those aspects will then flow into the RSPO standard. And how do we work together on that? So I think the way that we've been dealing with it with the HES approach is to be inclusive as possible and as open as possible. So we invite RSPO into all of our processes and all of the working groups, and so that we can, as much as possible, integrate at that level. But then at the decision-making level, I think we need to have a shared platform, as we have for the No Deforestation Task Force, or I forget the acronym for that now, but there can be more details on that. So we look forward to that partnership continuing.
Thanks, Grant. All right, I'm going to move to our next speaker, Ms. Kwan Yi, who's going to speak on the implementation of Criteria 7.2 requirements. Do you need the little clicky? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Under the RSPO PNC 2018, which was endorsed last year during the GA, one of the criteria 7.12 is stipulated that land clearing does not cause deforestation or damage any area required to protect or enhance high conservation value areas or high carbon stock forests, which CVs and which CS forests in the managed area are identified and protected or enhanced. And following this, there are 8 indicators in this criteria, 7, which is mentioned here. And highlight of this criteria is the commitment to no deforestation and protection of high conservation values or high carbon stock areas, high carbon stock forests, prior to any land clearing by RSPO members. And we believe that this will be achieved through the adoption of the HCSA toolkit for the identification of high carbon stock forests for conservation. There are a total of 3 task force or working groups established to look into the implementation of these criteria, specifically for the indicator 7.12.2, whereby the No Deforestation Task Force was formed this year. And for this task force, the main mandate is to look into the transition cases that is applicable during the transition period within this 1 year, that is 15 November 2018 until the 15 November 2019. However, during our discussion in this task force, we acknowledge that there are some cases or scenarios would applicable and is not just during the transition period. So in the later slide, we will discuss more on that. And we also have the No Deforestation Joint Steering Group, which is formed together with the High Carbon Stock Approach Steering Group, the members from RSPO and members from PCSA. We discussed on the indicator 7.12.3 on the legacy case for the high forest cover landscape and also high forest cover countries. For the indicator 7.12.6 and 7.12.8, regarding the RTE protection, HCV management, and also the compensation, we have the biodiversity and HCV working group discuss on that. And for the No Deforestation Task Force, we have developed this document, the interpretation of indicator 7.12.2 and NS5, which was approved by RSPO Board of Governors in June 2019 this year. And this document is mainly to provide more clarity on the implementation of criteria 7.12.2 and the NS5, which was stipulated in the RSPO P&C 2018. And this will also provide the alternate process. As just now mentioned, there are quite a number of scenarios, and in this task force, we discuss the scenarios and how it is applicable and how we can achieve our commitment to the no deforestation. And in this document, you will notice that there is mention on case register, which means that for those transitional cases, members, we need to do the register case to the RSPO. And we have the land use risk identification, which we call LURI. This is to minimize the disruption while ensuring the compliance by identifying the low-risk areas, which while we are conducting the standalone HCSA assessment. And we also have the RSPO HCV review to review the quality of the non-ALS HCV assessment reports, which was conducted covering for both the approved MPP with ongoing land clearing after 15 November 2018, and for those companies that go in for initial certification, which will be audited against the P&C 2018. And we also have the standalone HCSA assessment, which is an alternative assessment to comply to the criteria 7.12. Here we summarize it into two. One is for the transition cases, and another one is non-transitional cases. For the transition cases, what it means? It means that this is only, the requirements under the transition cases is only applicable within the stipulated time period. One of it is the new plantings with ALS HCV assessment, which were ongoing before 15 November 2018, but yet to be completed. Or for those assessment reports that already completed and was started before the 15 November 2018, but not yet submitted to the ALS for quality review. And areas with approved MPP, but with the pre-ALS HCV assessment and planning for the land clearing after 15 November 2018. For all these cases, we are required to register to the RSPO through the case register, which at first the deadline for the submission was 13th September 2019, but we acknowledge that there could be members still not really know what is this means, and we hope through this session we will inform all of our members who fall under these scenarios. Please register to the RSPO through the case register, and the deadline is now extended to the 30th November 2019, which is this month, by end of this month. If we miss this case register, the members is required to conduct the integrated HCV HCSA assessment. For the third scenario, new plantations and existing uncertified plantations with new land clearing after 15 November 2018 with an ALS CV assessment submitted to the ALS before the 15 November 2018, the members is required to conduct the land use risk identification to identify the low risk and high risk area. For the high risk area, it is required to conduct the CSA assessment. And MPP must be submitted by 15 November 2019 or 6 months after the ALS peer review approval, whichever longer. For the non-transition cases with the new land clearing, which means that for those existing certified plantations with new land clearing after 15 November 2018, we are required to conduct the land use risk identification to determine the risk area, and also conduct the standalone CSA assessment for those with ALS CV assessment for the high-risk area, or you can just skip the land use risk identification. You can just go direct to the integrated CV CSA assessment. And for those with non-ALS CV assessment, is required to conduct the integrated CV CSA assessment. And this is applicable throughout the RSPO PNC 2018, which is the 5 years, valid for 5 years. That means now it's left 4 years, or when there is any announcement made by RSPO related to these cases. For the uncertified plantations and no new land clearing after 15 November 2018, but with the CV assessment that is not ALS, is required to submit the CV assessment report to the RSPO for the CV assessment review. And here, I believe all of you here, you have this fact sheet, which is have the process, the flow chart on existing certified plantations, new and existing uncertified plantations with new land clearing after 15 November 2018, and existing uncertified plantation with no new land clearing. And from here, you will know the requirements that is required by the members. And it's very important that all the members here, you understand and you have done the requirements as stated. For the NDTF, No Deforestation Task Force, our ongoing or the future outputs will be, we have the CSA Auditor Checklist, which is a guide for the CBs to ensure the 7.12.2 requirements are implemented on the site. And we will also have the standalone CSA assessment review template revision together with CSA. And this template is to cater for the certification purpose, because at the moment for the CSA assessment report, the review report, there is no satisfactory or not satisfactory. It is unlike with the CV assessment report. And this is challenges for us as a RSPO standard when we go for the audit purpose. Hence, for this task force, we will discuss together with CSA to revise the template so that for the certification purpose, there will be more descriptive recommendation for the members to ensure the members are in compliance with the requirements. And we are also doing the analysis of gaps for the integrated conservation and land use plan, ICRUP, which was developed by the CSA. And for this analysis, the main purpose is to identify any missing elements with the current MPP and the ICRUP, so that we can ensure the required assessment are done in the MPP stage itself and avoiding additional assessments required during the development phase. So, thank you.
Thanks, Kwan Yi. So, super simple, right? Everybody's got that memorized now. We're going to do a pop quiz at the end for all of those different process flows. So you can see why it was necessary for us to form this No Deforestation Task Force to better flesh out some of these scenarios that we didn't necessarily have the time to dive into during the PNC review. So it's it's been an evolving process to try to simplify, and that's simplified, it really is, as much as possible. I want to maybe just follow up and ask you, Kuan Yi, from a grower's perspective, having started to work on some of these pathways yourself, how have you found these kind of new tools or pathways that we've set up, like the land use risk assessment? How has that operationally been going for you when you've been trying to use that?
Yeah, for the land use risk identification, we are actually to use it. We can refer back to the land use change analysis. Because for all the members, when we are going to submit the MPP, we need to do the land use change analysis. And for this land use risk identification is not another new study or analysis. We can actually refer back to the land use change analysis on the satellite images, where are the CV areas, where are the CS areas. So from that, we just need to acquire 2 more satellite images for this land use risk identification, with the cutoff date is November 2015 and November 2018, to identify the high risk and low risk area. For those low risk area, we can then proceed for the land clearing purpose. And for high risk area, we are required to conduct the standalone CSA assessment, or the companies can choose to conduct the integrated CV CSA assessment. So from the company that I work for, our experience is that it will not require details or very costly cost for that. It's just that it can be done within, the most will be like 1 month or less than that, because we already have the information from the land use change analysis. Thank you.
Thanks, Kuan Yi. I'd like to ask our last speaker to come up to the stage, Jenny, who's going to speak on the no deforestation principle in terms of the next steps and aspects that we need to consider. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you very much and welcome. The last session looks perhaps really complicated, but in the end you will see that's relatively simple and transparent, where it's really clear what you have to do, when you have to do it, and what will be the end result. Now we are talking about all these topics where we are on the way as RSPO to find solutions, to find tools, to find the right procedures to address different difficult parts of implementation of no deforestation. So it is not yet the end results what we can present here, so it's the way that we are going. Which direction? Okay. To have it in mind, the overall principle is to implement a no deforestation principle in the operations around all palm oil developments in the world which are related to RSPO or which are committed to sustainable palm oil. What I'm talking about is the No Deforestation Joint Steering Group, the topic about high forest areas outside of high forest countries, smallholder standard, jurisdictional approaches, and the application of the HCSA toolkit outside of moist tropical forests. So all topics which are highly debated and not finished yet. Okay, only very short. What is the definition? Why we need a joint steering group between RSPO and HCSA? In the PNCs, we decided to define that high forest cover countries, which are countries which have a forest cover over 60%, and palm oil development pathways versus in this moment under 1%, but we have a trajectory and we will see frontiers and movement, that these are the countries where we think about procedures which are not 100% in line with the combined HCV-HCSA toolkit. in these countries, we have landscapes that are the high forest cover landscapes. But for the RSPO, and that's really important to understand this, we decided as the task force, as the RSPO task force, to limit the discussions to high forest cover landscapes in high forest cover countries. The purpose of the joint steering group is that we are working together with HCSA to develop procedures which allowing development of high forest cover landscapes in high forest cover countries. I have prepared myself and in my sleep was high forest cover countries. To specific procedures for one side cases which are already in the landscapes, as plantations, license holders which are already in the landscapes, and development by indigenous peoples and local communities with legal or customary rights. Very important is that this should not be a satellite group somewhere in the orbit discussing on very high level how this can be done for Solomon Islands, Gabon or other countries, and then we really have the task and the mandate to taking into consideration regional and national multi-stakeholder processes. Okay, I will skip this, you will get the slides. That's the membership of this group. What is the status? You can see we have done some steps. We could complete some of the very necessary baseline work in the working group. So we have terms of reference. We had a first physical meeting in April. Some group discussions started to find joint definition of forests and a proposal for a legacy definition. We started to draft a questionnaire to include the stakeholders on the ground in the different high forest cover countries to get a better picture of their motivation, their task, their ideas, and the next call of the working group will in November. One topic in this high forest cover landscape discussion are high forest cover landscape outside of the high forest cover countries. The HSA has not the definition or which is limited to high forest cover countries, sondern they are working with high forest cover landscapes. And this moment, there is no mandate from the RSPO Board of Governors for any working group in the RSPO to talk about this type of landscapes, which are outside of high forest cover countries. There are, from our point of view, two possible ways forward. One is that this is clearly limited to the discussion in the HCSA. They have a legacy working group. They can find a procedure and a solution with these cases, or it needs to be brought up to the Board of Governors to get a mandate. Okay, as a topic, the independent smallholder standard, it's up for voting in this GA, is clearly also a tool where we have intensive discussion how to implement HCSA, HCV for smallholders. HCV can be identified using the simplified HCV app for independent smallholders. So here we have already a solution for this part of the combined model. But we don't have a simplified HCS approach yet. You heard from Grant, the work is processing from the HCSA side, but in this moment, there is no solution yet. The proposal from the smallholder working group is to form a smallholder no deforestation task force and then discuss in this task force, including also external stakeholder and everybody what is interested in this topic, how a way forward could look like. Jurisdictional approaches, a new and exciting approach and way forward for sustainable palm oil or sustainable commodity production. The main topic here is that we really have to think outside of the box. A jurisdictional approach is not a standard. Yeah? So it is always an effort with government systems are driving forces or have to be driving forces for jurisdictional approaches. From the experience in Sabah and also in the district of Serian, is clear, or it looks like, that HCV 1 to 4 is possible to implement on a jurisdictional landscape level. 5 to 6 not, but 5 to 6 is a very specific local analysis and the local assessment needed. The same is for HCS. For HCS, yeah, we can do an HCS indicative mapping, where things are located, but some of the parts of an HCSS assessments are based on local situations. So we have to find the right way forward to combine landscape and jurisdictional implementation with local assessments. If you'd like to know more about it, tomorrow is a session about jurisdictional approaches and the way forward. Okay. And then we do have the situation that we have palm oil development in parts of the world which were not in the focus of the HCSA approach. Yeah? And my overall statement here is yes, we are discussing a lot about how to implement HCS, and that's a new thinking and a new tool, but in the end, 7.12 is not only about HCS. It is about no deforestation, it's about management of forests, management of conservation, it's about community rights, it's about species and others. So we should not limit ourselves and our thinking only to high carbon stocks, and then take a broader approach, a broader picture, how we can implement all the different elements in the different parts of the world. And very, very important here is also the management and the monitoring of things. It's fine to assess it, and it's fine to have a transparent map, who is what, but in the end, what counts is the management of conservation areas. Okay, only a map where the HCS approach can be implemented, and where's the application of the high carbon stock approach in the world. And you see it is a relatively broad corridor. So the point of not be really implementable, the toolkit, it's very small areas, and there we will find practical solution for these areas. Thank you very much.